Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello,
Hi, Gilad.
Asaf. How are you?
I'm great. I'm excited. I wasn't here last week.
Right.
So I'm very, very excited to get back to our students, to this semester.
So we're in lesson 5 today.
Lesson 5.
And the lessons are evolving,
Wow.
and I'm really enjoying it, and we hope that you guys are too. And before we get into today's lesson, first of all, who do we have with us connected?
We
have a
have
few people.
We have quite a few people from many places.
All around.
That's the beauty of the education center, really connecting points in the hearts in many places. I see Costa Rica, Pennsylvania, Brazil, LA, Florida, Princeton, New Jersey, Denmark, Melbourne, Australia.
Aussie.
We have Toronto here, we have Pittsburgh, we have Arizona, Colombia, Trinidad and Tobago, Spain, Holland, Atlanta, Georgia. It's beautiful. South Carolina, Miami, Scotland, Finland, Vermont. It's Venezuela. It's amazing.
This is really
It's amazing.
international. So even though you're sitting at home now on your computer and you're seemingly alone, you're really not alone. You're connected to hundreds of people from all around the world who are now simultaneously with you, tuning in to that very same frequency, which is called the point in the heart, which you can call spirituality.
Right, so we're not just connected over communication lines.
Right. Well, at least we don't want to be only connected over communication lines. And that's maybe the purpose of what we'll do right now. We'll start off, remember last lesson we spoke about preparation, how every lesson we need to tune ourselves in to really build that connection, to be beyond just communication lines, just beyond this mutual chat where we're all gathering together. So what we really want to do is prepare our hearts. So again, we'll go back to that same illustration from last week, that we now are this heart with all these different desires that have, been built up through the day, the corporeal desires. And we'll add to that illustration what we didn't do last week, that it's not just your heart. There's also the heart from Spain, and the heart from Melbourne, and from Canada, and from New Jersey.
Finland, Scotland.
That also had a similar day, with desires of the will to receive. And now, what we want to do when we start the lesson, and before preferably, that's what we want to prepare, we want to start connecting to a different frequency. To a frequency that is driven by this new desire that's awakened in us. And while we all do that together, we actually start resembling this upper system, the collective soul, which we'll actually talk about today. So let's watch a clip now. Now this clip, the topic of the clip isn't directly related to the lesson, and that's fine, because the purpose is one. The purpose is to connect beyond the internet connection. The purpose is to tune our hearts beyond the desires that have built up through the day. All right, so let's do that. Let's watch that clip with that intention. And that will change everything you get from this lesson. So let's do it. Let's prepare ourselves. Let's tune our hearts.
The Creator sends me troubles? No. What appears to me is those forms that cannot clothe inside my matter. And it appears to me as troubles and problems, diseases, whatnot. All the troubles in our world are those forms that we didn't want to accept as forms of bestowal, to take them upon ourselves. And they are revealed in our world as forms of suffering, as the gap between the form of bestowal that we have to undertake and us. And this awakens all kinds of suffering. There is no other source of suffering, whether internal suffering, external suffering, personal, global, whatever. You can put it differently. You can say all the good things come from the revelation of the Creator. All the bad things come from the Creator's concealment. It's the same thing. All the good things come from the revelation of the Creator within me, the form in my matter. All the bad things is when his form is revealed in the opposite way. That is called a concealment. What is a concealment? It's the same form, only opposite. Let's say I can't find a job for a year and I can't provide for my family. So, okay, what am I doing? That's the situation. On the one hand, I'm looking for a job as a regular person, working according to the laws of this world, but also, how do I match my form to the Creator or something like that? You have to keep looking for a job with all your efforts from dawn to dusk, like a regular person, and also think that you will only find a job by actually looking for it with your hands and legs in corporeality. Along with it, you also have to be certain that this situation comes from your oppositeness to the form that you should have had already, and that if you were already corrected spiritually, you were immersed in goodness, for sure. Just like he explains to us in the article, The Revelation and Concealment of the Creator. Either you suffer and you're in poverty and so on, or you're in goodness. And what does it depend on? Whether the Creator is revealed or not. What does that mean? Whether I took on His form or not, according to my degree of development. Now, eventually, these are all words. There's studying and there's practicing. So, what does the fact that I don't have a job and I can't provide for my family has to do with the form of bestowal that I need to take on? Because this is what appears to you. Your attitude, your relation to the Creator appears to you in a way that you don't have anything to eat. If you were similar to him, according to your level of development, you wouldn't feel any badness. What does he write in that article? One doesn't feel any lack and so on. How could it be? Revelation and concealment of the Creator. His concealment brings you troubles. His revelation brings you goodness. As simple as that. And it's in the simplest things, your belly, your health, your honor, your success, money, anything. Whatever you say. It all depends on the equivalence or match that I have with the Creator. He created me, and all the deficits in me come from the light as a replication of Him. My level of adhesion with Him fulfills me, and it happens on the still vegetative, animate, and speaking levels of this world and in spirituality. So what else can I see as the cause for everything? But I'm told you should see everything as dependent on Him. But what is your connection with Him? What is your state? If you are in spirituality, then there's no problem. Then you're already connected with Him through your soul. You know what to do. If you are in corporeality only, meaning detached from Him, so don't imagine things. You have to work in corporeality just like a regular person, according to your level, and you work according to your level in spirituality too. Only there, it is apparent to you. You know what to do, and in this situation, it's not. So you have to go look for a job, and alongside, realize that everything depends on the revelation of the Creator to you. And if someone looks for a job and he's not studying Kabbalah, he looks for a job on his level. You already have to equalize and match two levels. If I am not for myself, then who? And there is none else besides Him.
All right, and we're back. And just a quick correction, we're on lesson 4, not lesson 5.
It was a good, test, just a quick check to see that everyone's alert.
Everyone's not only aiming for spiritual reality, but also living in this reality as well and following time. Mm-hmm. So this is lesson number 4. And today's lesson is going to continue directly from the last lesson. So let's just quickly remember what we've done. You know something?
No,
Let's do a recap.
Yep.
Right. So we started off the first lesson. Let's just change the color. The first lesson was what? We talked about what is the wisdom of Kabbalah. And we said that it's a method that enables a person to rise above get behind the scenes of this reality, to rise above from this world to the spiritual world. That is the only place where a person can take control of their lives, can make anything change, because the spiritual world is the world of causes, and this world is already a world of consequences. We also spoke about what Kabbalah is not. It's not mysticism, it's not religion, it's not red strings, it's not holy water. It's actually nothing in this world. It's a method that brings a person to reveal the upper force, the force that dominates reality, and by doing so, it enables a person to basically expand his perception and unlock his desire out of the place where it's currently limited to what Kabbalah calls a tiny dot, a tiny illumination of this world, which is nothing, which is zero fulfillment, and bring him out to the world of infinite fulfillment, of bestowal, of love, of the Creator, of nature, of however you want to call it. That was lesson number 1. In lesson number 2, we continued and we went back to where. Where did this begin? Where did this come from? How did it all start? Because if you want to know where to go, then you need to know where you're headed, right? You need to know the whole picture, where it started and where it ends. Then we did this illustration of 3 lines of where it started with a thought of creation, that the thought of creation was to benefit the created beings, and then the spark of this world, the Big Bang, 14 billion years ago, and then how at our time now, the ego, the desire, has reached it's reached satiation, it's reached the end of its development. And that's why there's this inner feeling in humanity which is already being seen as depression, as search for meaning, as a desire for personal development. And that is the end of the development of the desire, of the will to receive. So deep down inside, you and every person in humanity, or a lot of them are already beginning to have this clear understanding that the fulfillment on this level is limited, highly limited. And then humanity is seeking out to find a fulfillment on a different level, and that's called the wisdom of Kabbalah, spirituality. And that's what we have to do, is we have to go and climb back up that same ladder in order to reach attainment, adhesion to this upper force. So that was lesson number 2. And then in the lesson number 3, which was the last lesson, we spoke about the how, right? So we know where we want to reach. We want to reach this spiritual world. The wisdom of Kabbalah is the method that teaches you how to do that. That's the what. The where is the spiritual world. And then we'll start talking about the how. But in order to explain the how, we first have to understand where we are. And what we did last week is we understood the reality of which we're in. That actually, there is no reality, right? That's how we started the last lesson. That there is no objective reality outside of man, that everything is perceived in man. And we drew this little box, and we said this is the black box of reality. This black box is a function, is a program, and this function filters out everything it gets in reality. So what is outside is a big unknown, it's a big question mark, and what enters the box is unknown, but what is known is what this box is made of, the hardware of this box. And we clearly defined that, and actually that was an incredible discovery, and that was the answer to the scientific search for this single equation which describes all of reality in one simple and elegant equation. And we revealed that equation last week, and I'm not kidding, because that really is it. That same understanding, that same simple description of all levels of nature, this all-inclusive single equation that describes everything from the still, the vegetative, the animate, and the speaking, was described in a single sentence, a single equation. And that is, the hardware of this reality is a will to receive. That's what it was. That's it, a will to receive. And if you missed last lesson, then it's highly recommended that you review that, because it really is interesting to lay out and understand that simple equation that describes all of reality, and that's the hardware, and that's what was created. That is the only thing that was created, nothing else. So only a will to receive was created, and that will to receive evolved throughout these 14 billion years, right? And it evolved from still to vegetative to animate to the speaking level. And we said that this will to receive cannot change. But the only thing that's limiting our perception from really, truly understanding and feeling and sensing this utter fulfillment that's outside of us, because that's what Kabbalists say, that what is really outside is light. It's absolute bestowal. It's infinite fulfillment. And why don't we feel that? Why do we feel in this world suffering and pain, and we see wars around us? It's not that we need to change our glasses to be optimistic and look everything for the better and say, oh, everything happens for the good for a good reason, and the fact that there are wars, it's really good but we don't see it. That's all nice to say, but the wisdom of Kabbalah is not satisfied by nice things to believe in, but it only aims for attainment. And this attainment, it not only lifts a person from the level of this world to the spiritual, but it changes the way reality is. It changes reality. And a person sees reality the way he does is because of the software that's running on this program. And what was that software? So we also defined that. So that software was a will to receive, and then we added to that with the intention in order to receive. Right? So what does it mean with the intention in order to receive? How can that be such a big deal, the intention? Then we gave a few examples. We said, right, you can do a simple action of cutting someone, and that action can be an action of murder, of taking a life, or it can be an action of saving a life, of a surgeon operating on someone to save them. So it's the exact same action, but the intention turns it into a completely opposite thing, right? So that's the same here. A will to receive does not change. It's similar to the act of cutting something with a knife. But the intention completely changes the action. And right now, humanity is in the intention, the will to receive, in order to receive. That is the only thing that limits our perception. And that led us to explain the law of equivalence of form, that in spirituality, we can, if we're equal to something in quality, then we're close to it. Unlike in this world, if two things are close physically, then we say they're close, right? But in spirituality, there is no time, there is no space. So what determines if something is close is its equivalence of form. And right now, our form is opposite of the spiritual world, which is utter bestowal. However, there is maybe a potential happy ending, and the beginning of that happy ending is the point in the heart, which is the beginning of the soul. It's not yet a soul. There is no soul that is in a person, like people commonly say, you have a beautiful soul. So Kabbalah is very, very, very clear cut, and it says, no, you don't have a soul. You need to develop one. You can develop one. Every person can. But until you do, you only have a dot, a point. And that point is that single point in the heart that's in this whole desire, that's a call from above, this little dot here, and this dot in its quality is similar to what's outside of us. And that's the beginning of that sensation that there is something there is something greater, there is something more meaningful, there is something that can really give meaning and fulfillment in our lives. It's still not clear because it's just a dot, it has no area, it has no volume, but it's there, and we feel it. And that's the reason why we feel something outside is because of equivalence of form, because that same dot is from the beginning of creation. It's this part that is similar to the quality of bestowal. And then the question is, okay, so what do we do? How do we reach equivalence of form? How do we develop this desire and reach attainment with the Creator? So this dot is really, how when you have these apps and then you have these annoying notifications, you got to upgrade your app, it's time to upgrade. So that's basically the point in the heart. The point in the heart is like that pop-up, that notification, that it's time to upgrade your software. It's not an upgrade yet, but it's a call to upgrade. And the wisdom of Kabbalah is the upgrade. It makes you upgrade it, because you have to do it yourself. And today's lesson, we're going to focus on that new software. So what is that new software that we need to install? So up until now, if there are any questions, go into or already start?
I'm not really seeing that we have questions yet, but it's a great moment to actually remind you guys that we are welcoming all of your questions on the topic. So just go ahead and anything that you want to be asked, you send it and we'll ask it.
Right, and meanwhile, we'll ask you. So we said that the hardware is clear. It's the will to receive, right? That's that illustration here. If we can, right, that's that box with the orange frame. That's the will to receive. Now, we said that the software on it is in order to receive. And that's the thing that is leading us to feel this world as alienated, as separate, as suffering, and so on. So what does it need to change to? What's the upgrade? What are we upgrading to? That's a question for you. And it will probably take you a few seconds because of the delay. So we'd love you to put your answers in the chat. So again, the question is, what is the upgrade we need to do? If you already want to add to that, then how can we do it? So what's the upgrade and how can it be done?
In the meantime, we do have a question from Wayne from Canada, who's asking, what happens if a person is unable to achieve equivalence of form with the Creator within his or her lifetime?
That's a good question, Wayne.
Maybe we can quickly say that this is the good thing about spirituality. It's called, there's no absence in spirituality. Nothing disappears. It's an accumulative process. It's a process where whatever you do in spirituality builds on top of what you did before, which means that whatever a person manages to attain through the awakening of the point in the heart in their life cycle remains. And then what it means is that they can reach the final correction in their life cycle, or they can reach the first degree of spirituality, or they can reach anywhere on the 125 degrees of the spiritual ladder, as you're already starting to be familiar with this concept. But just what happens if they attain a certain level and they still need another development in this world to continue to attain the rest of the degrees. So their next life cycle will be designed in such a way that they will once again discover the point in the heart, and they will very quickly achieve what they had before, and then move on to continue to advance in spirituality.
Right, and today actually this process has even sped up, and today Baal Sulam says that any person that hears about the wisdom of Kabbalah, that he just hears about it, has the potential to correct his soul in this life. So who was the question from?
That was Wayne from Canada.
So Wayne, don't have to wait for the next life. You can correct your soul. In other words, you can attain the spiritual world. In other words, you can become equivalent to the force of nature. You can rise above the level of this world to the level of the causes. You can do all of that in this life of yours, and Baal Sulam guarantees it. Because today, the desire has reached the end of its fulfillment, of its development. So every person in the world, that's why the wisdom of Kabbalah is spreading. That's why depression is on the rise. That's why we see the whole world is in this very special state. Sometimes it looks as crises, sometimes as opportunities. But it's really part of the same process, that the desire has reached its satiation already. And that's why anyone can reach the spiritual attainment in this life of theirs. All right, so let's move on to the lesson. Do we have another one?
We actually, the moment we asked, we got a few questions
Great.
immediately. So
and a few questions and maybe some answers to.
yeah,
our
I
question.
think we have an answer. I think Carol from Pennsylvania just said to receive in order to bestow. Here's an answer for us. Here's another one. Gary from California says need to change intention to the intention to bestow. Nikolov from Canada says change how we look at things, events, and everything that's around us. Millie from Indianapolis says move closer to the will to bestow through altruistic desire. Baza, I hope I'm pronouncing correctly, from Australia says altruism. Nate from Pennsylvania says, I've also noticed some past lesson videos that do not work, which is a technical comment that is also kind of an answer.
Right, and you should definitely send that to ec@kabbalah.info.
Right.
That will assist you.
And I see here, let's take another one. Tatiana from Park, Florida, I guess, says change our desire. So
Right.
maybe a couple more, but
altruism and bestow. That's from Leslie and Vivian. Also
couple more,
has
but
the
it seems
correct
like
answer.
everyone's around the same
Right.
ballpark.
So actually, all right. So I see you guys know that already. So nice,
Impressive.
impressive. So you've learned already. Maybe you've taken the offline course, Kabbalah Revealed, and that's great. That is good. So let's just go into the next level. My microphone fell. My microphone is making sounds.
Is it?
Let's try and.
Let's see. Maybe it's mine. No.
Okay,
Yours?
I'll just try and move less.
All right.
Okay, I apologize.
So we did have a few
Try to pick this
questions.
up. All right, maybe we'll keep going a little bit,
All right.
and then we'll start another level of questions because let's just get into it. So, what is this new desire we need to change to? So it's very simple. We need to change the intention, as it's been said, to receive in order to bestow. That's it. To receive in order to bestow. That's the correction of creation. That's the only thing that needs to be fixed. So right now, the state is this. This is, let's say, our vessel, and this is the fulfillment, and we're trying to fulfill ourselves directly, constantly, but with the intention in order to receive. And what happens is, as you felt this, and you do feel it actually all the time, is that the pleasure and the pleasure is cancelled is at the very second of the fulfillment. So the best example is food. You're really hungry. Every bite you take, you enjoy the food less and less and less. It's not only food, it's everything in life. Any pleasure you seek for, you chase, you get that, and it immediately cancels out the desire. Right? So it's like something here isn't working. The program is like it has a bug in the system. And it's true, it has a bug in the system. That bug was put there intentionally so a person can independently correct it. But there is a bug, and the bug is to receive in order to receive. And what's the alternative in order to bestow? So in order to bestow is already through what is called in the wisdom of Kabbalah a masach. It's like this. You can say it's a screen, but a screen is really just a translation. Masach is a spiritual quality. It's like this filter you put on your desire. And then your intention is in order, you do receive, so the action at the end is reception. That's the action. But the intention is in order to give. So that's the intention. Now, you can say this is a hack to fulfillment, and it really is, because by doing that, by having the intention in order to give, then you can receive infinitely. You become like a pipeline that the light flows through. and then your potential for pleasure and fulfillment becomes from very, very limited to infinite. So that's the hack for reality. That's how to reach ultimate fulfillment and pleasure. Okay, now you probably ask me, okay, so how do we do that? So it's good because every lesson will answer a how, and another how will awaken. Right? So how do we reach spirituality? We need to simply change our software from in order to receive to in order to bestow. And how do we do that? Okay, that's the next question that we need to address. Correct. But before we do, let's maybe read what Baal HaSulam has to say about this. So we'll just open the, right? So we're reading from Kabbalah for the Student on page 566. So it's from the preface to the Wisdom of Kabbalah, item number 1. The will to receive is the whole substance of creation from beginning to end. Thus, all the creatures, all the innumerable instances and conducts that have appeared and that will appear are but measures and various denominations of the will to receive. Let's read the next one as well. Let's read another one. When, for example, one moves one's hand from the chair to the table, it is because one thinks that by putting his hand on the table, he will enjoy it more. If he did not think so, he would leave his hand on the chair for the rest of his life without moving it at all. So we actually gave that example last week. And it's a good example because it's really, you can feel it, just right now, the way you're sitting, the way I'm sitting, is the way that will give you most pleasure to receive in order to receive. And the only thing that makes you move is the thought of getting more fulfillment by moving. If I didn't think I'd get more fulfillment by moving, I would just sit here and not move until I die. But I think I'll get fulfillment if I move, or then when there's a lens, then when the lesson ends, I'll get more fulfillment by getting up and going somewhere, or then by eating, or by showering, or by sleeping, or by working, or by spending time with my family. So that's what motivates us. That's our hardware and our software right now. That's the only thing that there is, right? And what do we need to reach? What is this intention that we need to reach? Let's talk about that a little bit. So let's read something more from Matan Torah on page 247 in Kabbalah for the Student. Let's open it up. All right. So Baal HaSulam says this. It's a natural law for any being that anything outside one's body is regarded as unreal and empty. And any movement that a person makes to love another is performed with a reflected light, and some reward that will eventually return to him and serve him for his own good. Thus, such an act cannot be considered love of others because it's judged by its end. It is like rent that finally pays off. However, the act of renting is not considered love of other. So here, so far, Baal HaSulam is just going deeper into saying that really all of these actions are still actions of reception, that even if you give something to someone, it's because you know that you'll have some pleasure out of it. But then he continues, and let's read that other slide. But making any kind of movement only as a result of love of others, without any spark of reflected light, meaning of fulfillment for oneself, and no hope for any kind of self-gratification in return, is completely impossible by nature. Encouraging, right? This means that all the good deeds that they do, either towards friends or towards their God, are not because of their love for others, but because of their love for themselves. And that is because it is completely unnatural. So here again, he keeps explaining that all of these seemingly good deeds, these good actions, they're only under the intention in order to receive. So before we really get into what it means to bestow, let's just make it clear that every single action that we do in this world is currently under the intention receive in order to receive. Right? So even these seemingly good deeds that I don't do for myself but I do for others seemingly, and I'm saying seemingly because they're at the end of the day a result of a calculation. And what I'm saying now, I'm sure a lot of you, or not a lot, but some of you are getting a bit irritated inside and not agreeing. How can that be we are good people, we do good things, and every person feels that inside. But really, when it comes down to it, and also sociologists back this up, that every action is a clear calculation of motivation and self-fulfillment. And even if I give something to someone, it's because I know I'll either get something in return, and that thing in return can be a good feeling as well. That's also a good enough reason to do something good for others because it fulfills me. Right? So that's everything in reality. It's all to receive in order to receive. That's what we're surrounded by.
Maybe let's kind of add even more kind of a gradual way to this model of what is the intention. Sometimes it helps kind of seeing it. You know, intention on the face of it is a very simple thing. It's the purpose for why we do what we do. It's the purpose behind an action. On that level, this is what we're familiar with. Anything that we do in our world has a certain purpose, right? It's the why behind what we do. Now that already makes a very big difference between things that we do. You can take a knife and you can cut someone, and that could be an act of violence, or it can be a doctor that is now operating on a person to save his life. So obviously the action may be similar, but the intention behind it, the purpose behind the action, is very different. Now, on that level of the actions that we're familiar with in this world, we can say there's many different kinds of intention, right? People do different things for different reasons, for different purposes. Kabbalah talks about the super paradigm. It takes us to the basis of reality, and it says at the core, we're all a will to receive, that you're already familiar with. We studied that pretty much from lesson 1. And it says the super paradigm, the intention, the purpose behind the will to receive, everything that it calculates and does and works, that engine, it's programmed to work with one purpose, to receive pleasure. That's the level of intention that Kabbalah talks about. It's important to understand that because sometimes we get confused between all kinds of deeds and actions that people do in this world. And we can say, yeah, but it was to do this in order to save someone's life, right? Like the surgeon, or in order to help someone, right? And on the level of this world, this is what we call kindness. And that's great. But what Kabbalah talks about, again, is the foundational level of how we think and act and feel, and that is our vessel of perception of reality, of sensation of reality. That's the will to receive. The intention by which it works is to receive, to fulfill itself. That is simply what Kabbalah is saying. So when we're talking about a change of software and hardware, to go back to Gilad's terminology from before, we're talking about something that is deep within the structure of our being. And that's where Kabbalah is taking us. So every human being has that operating system, to use that terminology. It's not that some people are bad and some people are good because they want to receive pleasure. It's the basis of our nature. That's basically what Kabbalah explains. And if you want to upgrade that, then you need to understand how to find that level. First of all, how to reach that level. So there was a question about what is that screen and how do I attain it and so forth. It's on that level that we're talking about. It's beyond those actions that we do with our hands and legs. Mm-hmm. It's changing the program of the will to receive, of how it works.
Right, and to answer your question, and the question that will come up more and more, how do we actually do it? Mm-hmm. Well, that's what we're learning throughout the course, and every time we'll open up another layer and another maybe method of not another method, but we'll expand how it can be done. And we'll give you a hint that you're already doing it. The fact that you're here, that you're in a lesson, that you're connected to other people with a mutual desire, that we're all connected to the source. We're all studying from, if you don't have this, then you should definitely get this. We're all studying from this book, and this isn't just a piece of paper, because paper is nothing, and it's not just words that are written here. But what's written here is the attainment of a Kabbalist a Kabbalist who reached the spiritual level, who reached the spiritual worlds, and he writes to us from that level. And when we read these things together, the authentic Kabbalistic writings, not just anything that anyone wrote, but authentic Kabbalistic writings, Baal Sulam, for example, Rabash, for example, Ari, for example, Zohar, for example. And in Bnei Baruch, by the way, we only teach authentic Kabbalistic writings, nothing else. So when we read this, we're already bringing upon ourselves this, let's call it for now, light. We haven't explained it yet, we haven't gotten into it, but you should know that you're already doing a spiritual action by activating your desire, by connecting it to others, by connecting it to a teacher, by connecting it to the book, to the level of the Kabbalist that attained it. By that, you're already advancing towards these states we're talking about. So, I'm telling this to you because a lot of times students are, come on, so how do I do it? So it's a good question, and it's good that you have this desire to understand that, but you should also know that you're partially already doing it.
The point in the heart that you have is the key to developing the new program. It's the beginnings, the initial lines of code of a new program that can be written together with your practice in the wisdom of Kabbalah, and something called contact with that illumination or the light that reforms that comes from studying Kabbalah. That's a deeper concept that we'll get to. Did we discuss this before in previous lessons a little bit?
A little bit, and that's actually, you'll say that we're talking only about that in every lesson all the time. We're talking only about the different angles of developing that same point, right? How do we start the lesson today and last week? Very simple. We have that tiny little point. That's the only point in us that's equivalent to the spiritual world, and that's what we want to develop. So develop it, we want to tune into that point first of all. We want to connect it to each other in order to expand it. We want to connect it to the source in order to expand it. We want to draw the light upon it in order to expand it. That's the wisdom of Kabbalah. So I see there are already a few questions. Let's just finish the explanation of what this is in order to bestow, and then we'll move on to some questions. So it's clear to us that right now we're working under this software of receiving in order to receive. We need to move that to receive in order to bestow. And what Asaf was emphasizing, and that's a really important point here, we're talking about a change of intention. So I can take the old lady across the street 100 times today, but is that a spiritual action? No, that's not a spiritual action. And I can donate money, and I can do a lot of things that seem like they're bestowal, but Kabbalah says no, they're not, because bestowal is something that's out of the level of this world, and that's through the intention. And that's the only thing that needs to change. And Kabbalah teaches us how to change that. And being in bestowal is already unlocking a higher level of reality. So let's just watch a short clip, and then we'll conclude that explanation and move on to questions. So we're on clip number 2.
Let's say I'm walking on the street and I'm seeing an old man who needs help. Can I use this action to draw the light that reforms? It depends on you. If I'm using this action with an intention, good, great. Judging by the intention, of course you can. Judging by the intention, but if you help the old man cross the street and you're telling yourself, I'm so holy, I'm righteous, then you did the opposite thing, you understand? That's the question. And it doesn't matter whether you're doing something that has to do with religious customs or anything else. In humanity, you'll find millions of people who want to do good things, helping in hospitals and doing many things. They are doing good things in corporeality, but is the world really getting any better? No. Do they actually create something good? No, because the intention is what changes the world, not the action. The Creator doesn't need our actions, because we're making our actions as a result of our egoism. Are we really making actions in order to correct our hearts or not? That's the question. If we're talking about actions that are necessary to live, then I have to do them even without any intention. That's called necessities. Neither condemned nor praised, but if it's beyond necessities, our beastly necessities, then I shouldn't do it. Because I'm ruining the world. I'm making actions in order to receive, and actually drawing away from spirituality and inviting troubles.
All right.
All right.
So, it's fine if you take the old lady across the street. That's absolutely fine. But the spiritual correction is the correction of the intention and not of the action. And by doing that, by changing that intention, we begin to unlock the spiritual layers. So right now, we're here. This is us, you, and every layer you open up with the intention opens up a deeper layer of the spiritual worlds. So this is Atzilut, Bria, Yetzirah. I hope these terms are somewhat familiar to you from the lessons you're taking on Wednesday, I think, or Thursday, with William and Dave. Atzilut, Bria, Yetzirah, Asiyah. Or you can actually look at it the other way around, depends from what side. So there's Adam Kadmon, Atzilut, Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiyah. And every time you change your intention, you're actually expanding your perception of what? Of that same collective soul, of spirituality. So you can look at this from a lot of angles. You can say, okay, this is 125 degrees, 125 degrees. You can say it's revealing the collective desire, which is the soul of Adam Arishon, and every layer that you open up with that intention, it unlocks another layer of that collective soul that you gradually start to rebuild. And by doing that, you're beginning to attain the true reality. So all of these things that you're unlocking here, they're filters. They're like concealments of the Creator. So altogether there are 125 concealments. And every time you correct your desire, and the desire it's not a one-time thing. It's, first of all, the first step is to break out of this world to the spiritual world. And that's the biggest jump. That's to go from step 0 to step 1. And that's the main purpose of the education center, of the beginning of the studies, to take that person to that first step of spiritual attainment. And once a person already reaches spiritual attainment, and it's not some imagination, it's not that I can feel it now inside and I feel the Creator. No, it's an actual sense. It's as tangible as this wood that I can now touch. It's as tangible as food that I can taste. And that's developing this spiritual sense. You attain spirituality as tangibly as your senses here, nothing less than that. And once a person does that, then he reaches a state that his soul can teach him already. And then by that he starts correcting his desires on the different levels of the 125 degrees until he becomes in complete equivalence of form with the Creator. And the beginning of that process has already started, and that's that very same. It all starts from that point in the heart, and that being drawn to find fulfillment of it and ending up here. So, do we have any questions?
Yeah, we do, actually.
All right, let's do it.
Let's start. We have a couple. So Tara from Vermont, when we started talking about the intention and how it's at the root of, at the root level of our nature, she immediately goes, wait a minute, so we don't have free will? And actually, Tara, you do have free will.
Wait, let's start with the short answer. Short answer is no.
Yeah, of
All right,
course.
go on now for
the short
the
answer is
longer
no.
answer.
Now the longer answer. Yes, you do have free will, and the way to find it is exactly by beginning to see where you don't have it. You see, think about it like that drawing that Gilad just put together. There's layers of reality, right? Look at a baby. Look at yourself. Would you say that a baby has free will? It's funny, a kid has free will. It's funny because, for the mother who looks at the kid playing in the living room, obviously she knows that if he goes too close to the oven or to something sharp, then he'll be moved because it may harm him. But for the kid, he's playing around and he's doing whatever he wants, but he's limited in the living room space. And so for a person who's a grown-up, it seems that we have the whole wide world as well around us, and we can run around and do all kinds of things and play around, right? But again, from a higher level of perception, we're limited by laws of nature. And you can take that kind of perspective and say, well, so freedom is really a relative thing, isn't it? Right? By understanding how you work at your core, what is your hardware and software and how it works before all your actions, as if preceding all your actions, thoughts, and behaviors in this world, in this external reality. By understanding that at the root level you have a will to receive with an intention to receive, it actually begins to free you to look for that space where you can develop a free thought and action and program. And specifically because you have a point in the heart, in addition to that operating mechanism of the will to receive, that is why you can find free will. And it develops in between that, in that space, in that interplay between the will to receive and how it works and the point in the heart. We have an entire lesson that's actually divided to 2 parts, and it comes towards the end of the semester. About it's actually in 2 weeks from
7 or 7 and 8,
where we will expand on this and explain this
fascinating
deeply.
lesson. It is a fascinating lesson, and one of my personal favorites, at least.
And we'll go step by step and exactly uncover free will according to Kabbalah. But that realization that we're making today, that we're operated by a will to receive with an intention to receive, is actually, like Gilad said, on the one hand, it says we don't have free choice, and that's right. But on the other hand, it begins to show us where we might have free choice.
Right, and if you just want to have a fun exercise until we actually have that lesson, then try asking yourself,
absolutely,
what drives your decisions? Simple example. I have coffee here and I have water here. What do I prefer to now drink, coffee or water? So I can say, yes, I'm free to choose. I choose to drink water.
Or of the 40 kinds of cereal that you find today in the supermarket.
Right. So what drove? So that's fine. So I'm in this illusion.
You can spend an hour today, these days, going into a supermarket and really fine-tuning the cereal that you want.
Right.
So
what drives that decision?
Free choice, maybe. Yeah.
What drives that decision? I'm choosing water over coffee. So then clearly I have free choice. I can choose the other if I want to. But if you go deeper inside to see what drives that decision, then you find that it's a simple calculation of profit versus loss. And if my end calculation is that I'll make more profit from taking a sip of water, then that's the action that I'll do. And if I want to prove a point maybe that I have free choice and therefore I'll choose coffee, then that means that is the calculation of more pleasure than I choose coffee. Now, just think about it. We're not going to open it up any more than that because we have a lesson dedicated to that specifically. But for those of you who got that, just try it out and you'll see how everything, you're not able to get out of it. It's even frustrating. You'll be like, wait a minute, but I want to choose that. But I'm doing that to show myself, and then I'm getting profit out of it, and you'll see that you're just locked into this desire. And it's a good exercise to at least see where we don't have free choice. And then you'll come with a true desire to find where we do have free choice. All right, next question.
So, Pardo from Colombia says, Kabbalists talk about studying and practicing. Right now we're studying the books, the lessons and so on. Practicing, is this something we're already doing, or is it something else?
That's a good question, Pardo. And as we mentioned before, yes, you are already partially practicing. We haven't taught you all of the toolbox for a Kabbalist because there are more things that go into the routine of a Kabbalist in order to reach those spiritual worlds. But some of those things we are already doing, even though we haven't explained them yet or we haven't spoken about them yet explicitly. And a few examples that were already given before is the fact that we're connected to the books, for example. And maybe just as an example, we'll just explain that, and then the rest of it we'll explain throughout the course. But when you're studying here, and you're opening a Kabbalah book meaning an authentic Kabbalah book, and you're reading in this book, it's seemingly a corporeal action, right? So you're looking in this book and you're reading, and it's seemingly like any action you're doing in this world. But because this book was written by a Kabbalist who was already here, so this book isn't talking about this world, it's talking from the spiritual level, it's talking about spiritual things. And even though it seems to us that it's written in simple words, it's written according to a language of roots and branches, which we'll talk about next week. And by reading this book, we're already pulling upon ourselves this special force. It's called light. You can put it simply as that. And that is already bringing us up to that level. So that's just an example of one of the Kabbalistic tools, which is a simple action of reading a book, but it depends on the intention of while you're reading. And even if you don't exactly have that intention yet, the fact that you're doing it and you're hearing a lesson and you're guided by us and you're doing it together, that is already practicing one of the things that can bring you up to that spiritual desire. And there are more things as well that we'll talk throughout this semester, and some also towards the next.
So Mikhail from Oakhurst, California, I think, says, again on that point of like the will to receive, and if we're all made up of that, what does that mean? There are a couple more questions about that, so let's talk about that. So he says, so if the will to receive is behind all our action, how can anything we do be otherwise?
All right, let's start with the short answer. It can't.
Exactly.
That's
That's
true.
the
It
short
can't.
answer.
We're locked into the will to receive. We cannot do anything else. We cannot make any movement outside of it. No matter how you try and twist and turn it, you're always locked in the will
And
to
you know,
receive.
and Barasulam already told us in the quote we just read, I think, right? We just read it. When I move my hand from this side of the table to that side of the table, it is because there is a program that says there's going to be more fulfillment if you move your hand, because it's going to be more comfortable, or because you're going to look better, or because you're going to clean the table and it makes you feel better. It doesn't matter, but there's some motive of profit, right, behind anything that we do. So how can anything we do be otherwise, as Mikhail says?
Well, it can't. At least not on this level.
We're done.
We're done. Okay.
Yeah,
so I hope it was a good lesson.
Let's go home.
Right.
And
No, it's funny because it really is. It's always these two answers. On the one hand, the answer is there is no freedom of choice. You have no soul. You can't do anything outside of that box, and it's frustrating. But it's important to recognize that while you're here, in this world, on this level, you can't make any changes because you're in the world of consequences. And in order to make the tiniest change, you need to rise to the world of causes, and that's it. That's the wisdom of Kabbalah. And then you begin to realize what freedom of choice is. And then you begin to work outside of that program because you're beginning to build that additional software to change that intention. And on this world, none of that can happen. It's on this world where Kabbalah says we're similar to animals. We're a body, we're a physical body, we're a developed animal. We can speak, we can suffer now for future pleasure. That's correct. But we're like an animal, we're a sophisticated one. And Kabbalah says you need to rise above that level to a different level, and there you can make these changes. There you can get freedom of choice. There you can take control of your actions, of your reality, of your destiny. Let's go on.
Right, so maybe we'll read Mark's question and then we can even add to that. So Mark, I think from Whitman, Arizona says, so what you're saying is we're all selfishly senseless in our will to receive, selfish gain. So how does something that can never be fulfilled how does something that can never be fulfilled a good thing? Right, so you're adding that point that not just that we're always operated by this program of to receiving pleasure, we also can never fulfill it. It's an endless, bottomless pit, right? It's this, we just keep fulfilling ourselves and emptying ourselves, and again and again and again. What's happening? What's happening to this lesson?
Right,
What is
it's
happening?
getting already a bit
What
even,
is happening to this Kabbalah study? Why did I get here? What's going on? No free choice, no real fulfillment. I'm locked in a program I can't change. That's beautiful if you feel all these things right now, because that's the beginning of what it means to practice the wisdom of Kabbalah, by the way, for relating to that question from before. Look, a tip for what to do at this point when you still need to kind of cover some basics and see how all that system of Kabbalah comes together. The point in the heart. That is what you need to focus on. You see, the beauty of what Kabbalah does to you when you start studying is that it seems like, all of a sudden you're realizing that you're locked, but you're actually seeing the opening. That's what you need to be focusing on. It focuses you on, first of all, unlearning all of the different ideas that you have about spirituality. That it's going and doing some things in this world, or putting on some different garments, or performing some certain rituals. Anything you'll do in this world will be a result of your will to receive with an intention to receive. Done deal. That's what Kabbalah explains, and with that exercise Gilad mentioned, you can start to see it on yourselves as you're realizing in this lesson as well. It focuses you on one thing, developing that inkling, that little point in the heart with which you came to these lessons, with which you came to this course. And if you put all your effort and focus and study the wisdom of Kabbalah from that point, you will actually be practicing the wisdom of Kabbalah. And you will begin to see how that act that seems like studying a lesson, which is like going through texts, running through concepts, it's actually not an intellectual process at all. What's happening is that you're beginning within yourselves right now in this lesson to separate, to differentiate between everything in this world and your initially developing soul. Not a fully completed soul yet. No one has a soul without developing it. That's just a figure of speech, in our world. You have a good soul, like Gilad said before. But you're beginning to find that area called the point in the heart within yourself. Learn how to differentiate that from this entire world and see how Kabbalah speaks to that, and learn how to develop that. When we are talking about an intention to bestow, when we're talking about discovering the Creator, when we're talking about levels of attainment of spirituality, all we are talking about is how that point in the heart develops. That point in the heart is in fact a spark that you have within you of the spiritual reality. It's coming from a state of existence that preceded your present awareness, where we were all connected as one created being, where we were all one entity that was in equivalence of form with the Creator. But now that entity was shattered, and so what we have is just a spark of that entity, a spark of that reality, and it's also trapped in a will to receive. So even about that, we're thinking in the concept of the will to receive and the intention to receive. What we need to do, and we learn how to do this by Kabbalah, is to free that spark from the will to receive. Talking about free choice. Develop it. We learn that it has an entire map of development. Kabbalists explain it to us, and we begin to feel it within us, see it within us, identify it in our process. So what you're going through right now is a very, very good thing.
Right, and actually in this lesson, it's like we've been kind of pointing out where all the places are that we can act in, and like Asaf was saying, that's a good thing, and it's maybe similar to imagining like this big barrier, this big brick wall that we're facing, right? So this is like the barrier to this is a wall, behind it is spirituality, and we're locked here in corporeality. And basically, asking, do we have free choice? No, we don't, not on this world. And saying, what can we act to change our desire? We can't, not in this world. It's basically directing us, because the transition to the spiritual world from here is very, very simple. It's just pressing this tiny little button that you need to find. That's it. It's this one button that if you hit that button, then you can transition into the spiritual world. But where is that button? It's like that story, remember, that we told in the first lesson, about that ship repairman who came to the broken down ship, and a lot of people tried to fix it before he did, and they weren't able to, and he came in and he just knocked on this tiny little place with his hammer, and the ship started working again, and then he charged a lot of money for fixing the ship, and they asked him why, and he says $2 for tapping with in the place that corrected the ship, but $10,000 for knowing where to tap. And that's the secret. That's what the wisdom of Kabbalah is leading us to. It's knowing where to tap, knowing where that single point is. And in order to know where to hit, you need to know also where not to hit, in order to not waste energy. Because if you feel that your freedom of choice is on the level of this world, then you'll be trying to get into to spirituality through here, or through here, or through here, or through here, and it's a dead end. So you need to know where you don't have freedom of choice. If you think that you can make changes by directly working on the level of this world, then again, you're hitting these different points, you're making efforts, you're wasting energy, actually, because all of these direct attempts to reach out to spirituality by changing an action in this world are a dead end. And this is already leading us to our single action, which is very, very simple, which is simply changing our desire. And now you're saying, how do we do that, though? And that's what we're studying here, and that's what we'll keep studying next lesson, and next lesson, and next lesson. But all that's leading us to this very, very simple thing, that's the only thing that needs to be hit. That's that single point that we need to touch upon, and that's it, and nothing else. And that's the gateway to spirituality.
Also, another thing that will help you, I think, is looking at that drawing and the wall. Really, many times we refer to the work in Kabbalah, the inner work in Kabbalah. First of all, it's all inner work. It's nothing. No work is on the outside. Sure, there's a framework. Like right now we're using texts. We're connected through computers to at a certain point in time, so we can study together and so forth. Right, but the actual work of spiritual development happens on the inside of the person. It's called inner work. Many times we refer to it as a scrutiny. Our work is a work of scrutiny because we're constantly finding within us where is that point in the wall. Or in other words, and even when it seems like we make futile efforts, we're actually scrutinizing. We're actually uncovering where is the wall itself, and where is that little slit or that little point that we actually need to touch. And that's the sensitivity you need to develop with the wisdom of Kabbalah. You'll be feeling it more as we advance. So we have a couple more questions.
All right, just before we get to them, I just want to mention something. Mm-hmm. You'll see this is unrelated, seemingly, but it is related because it really connects to what we're talking about, to working on that same point, meaning it's not the action that matters, it's the intention behind it. And if you go into the website, into the Education Center website, edu.kabbalah.info, then you'll see a banner on the top there. And if you read that banner, then you'll see that we're actually explaining the tuition model for this course, which is a very simple model. The course is free, but you can pay what you want, because we want to make the wisdom of Kabbalah available to anyone who wants to study, even if they can't afford it. And even though Asaf and I are volunteers, We come here to volunteer, and Adam, who's doing the tech, who's now running all the technology behind it, and a team of moderators that are currently in the United States. Like right now, at this very moment, we have about 6 or 7 volunteers that are making, keeping the lights on and making things tick. So that's great. But in addition to that, there are costs like servers and programs and softwares and cameras and a lot of things that we need to pay for. And at the end of the day, to keep the lights on, every student costs, the cost of every student per semester is about $25. So we're not charging those $25 because we want to make the wisdom of Kabbalah available to anyone, even those who can't afford it. Maybe someone in India, for them $25 is their yearly salary. So we don't want to prevent the ability from someone from India, for example, who has a point in that to study. But if you find value in this course, and we're already up to lesson 4, so by now you can already see if there's something that you do find value in, then we would really, really appreciate it, and not just us, but all the people in the world that will, this will be available for them thanks to you, then that will be really helpful and great. So how do you do it? Just go into edu.kabbalah.info. It's going to be up there for the next few days, so you can do this only in the next few days. So we'd really appreciate it if you help us and help all those who would like to study the wisdom of Kabbalah and maybe can't afford it, and help us keep this model. We don't want to start charging for a course to cover our costs, because we believe that it should be available to everyone. So hopefully it'll work that way. So that's an opportunity to do a physical action with the correct intention.
All right, so we have a couple more questions. Vera from Holland, I believe it was, yes, was asking this. And this is great because it gives us like a bigger context now. Is the development of the egoistic desire necessary for the development or the evolution of the corporeal world, or is the evolution in this world not of importance just to awaken us to the point in the heart? That's actually a great question, and it kind of feels like you're beginning to see a bigger picture from a couple of lessons that we went through already, and that's really great. First of all, to try to answer it shortly, everything that evolves in our world is exactly that. It's the evolution of the will to receive. The will to receive, put it in other words, is the engine that drives the evolution of everything that we see in our world, from the still level and the inanimate level, or the vegetative level, plants, minerals and plants, and then the animal level, the animal kingdom, and of course people, and the human society as a whole, and even all those social developments, changes in social regimes, and of course in the economic system of humanity, in the social formation of humanity, our quest for knowledge, the going to space, exploring space, or even getting into wars and horrible things. All the stuff that you see around you in this world is actually the result of the development of that will to receive. And what is happening is that it's like that scrutiny that happens to us on an internal level to understand where is our point in the heart and what's the purpose of our life, and that the purpose of our life is actually connected to that point in the heart that needs to be developed in order to attain the answer to the question, not just to hear it. A similar kind of process happens happens on a global scale, happens to the whole of humanity. And so Gilad mentioned earlier, if we look at our world, we see all kinds of phenomenon. I think you mentioned depression rates. Mm-hmm. There's a lot we can talk. I don't want to go into this in a lot of detail, but essentially, yes, all that development is for us to develop that point in the heart and rise to a whole new level of existence. Yes. So
we're running close to the end of the lesson.
Oh, right. So we're getting We're getting close. Okay,
Yep.
so do we want to try to answer a couple more questions?
Yeah, let's do a kind of a lightning round. Get a few more questions.
All right. I'm seeing Maggie. Then, sorry, there was a Vivian. That was one I saw before. That's important to address because we don't have a lot of time. So I'm just picking ones that are kind of different. And Vivian asked,
that's a good question.
how do these bottom-up classes relate to the top-down structure of reality classes? How do we fit them together? That's really important for us to put a few minutes to discuss.
Right. Well, maybe like 2 minutes, because. Right. So it's very simple. So what you're learning in the parallel lessons, you're learning basically about everything that started from the thought of creation, right? So that was from the light, and then as a result of the desire of the light to bestow, the creation of the kli, of the will to receive, and then you learned the 4 phases of direct light I saw in the last lesson, and we're not going to go into that in depth, just to explain the idea and the connection between the two. So altogether, you're learning from top down about the 125 levels of concealment, because that's what happened here. All of this was concealed. And then, until the only thing that was left was a spark, and that spark, with the will to receive, led to the evolution of everything in this world. And now we're here, and what do we need to do? We need to go back up again. And that's our only purpose. And that's the purpose of the study. So here, we're in these courses here, we're learning about the fundamentals of the wisdom of Kabbalah. But actually, the only thing that we want to achieve when we study is we want to rise back up to these systems again, to these same 125 degrees. So the connection is actually the same topic of the lesson, and that's the intention. Because when you're learning about the spiritual structures from top down, you're not learning it for knowledge, because the wisdom of Kabbalah brings you above the level of knowledge. It's good to know it just so you can grasp it, so you have some kind of connection with the materials. So for that, it is good to know the fundamentals and to know the structure of creation and to know the cascading of the spiritual worlds from top down. But the connection to those classes and what you're studying here is the intention. Why are you studying this? Why do you want to know what happened in the world of Atzilut and Bria and Asiyah and how the light and the Kli and the Tzimtzum and the restriction and the Masach and Or Choser and the returning light? Why do you need to know all these things? Because you want to rise back up to that level. And that's why you're studying. That's why you want to know. That's why we're explaining everything that we're explaining. And that is that single action of taking that point in the heart, we're getting back to that again, and that's what we'll always get back to, and expanding it to a kli. And that kli, as we mentioned briefly today, is already revealing, let's say, these layers of what you're studying in the other course. So do you need to learn intellectually the structure of creation to attain it back from bottom up? No, not at all. Do you need to have the intention to rise from bottom up? Yes. That's the only thing that you need.
All right, so we're coming close to concluding. Maybe what can make for a nice summary is what Rafael from Brazil posted, which was thank you for the explanations and the answers. So saying it in a short way, is it correct to say that it's all about expanding your point in the heart, and by doing so, perceive higher levels of reality, and in this way, to get closer to the Creator? That's actually a very simple summary that we can all make from our lesson. The intention is what develops, the intention to bestow is what you develop from that point in the heart as you learn how to focus it, and like Raphael said correctly, expand it and make it more sensitive, develop it into a fully grown intention to bestow that can actually begin to experience the connection with the quality of bestowal that is the Creator.
Right, and that intention is no physical action whatsoever. It's what we'll keep learning and opening up in this lesson that we did already today and the next lessons as well. But it's an intention. And how do we use it? What do we do? Well, stick with us and we'll learn more and more methods and tools in order to expand it, to build that soul.
So, stick with us on Sunday. Sunday will be January 29th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time as usual. We will be studying another structure of reality lesson. It's going to be very interesting. It's going to be very relevant to what we're talking about right now, the intention. You're going to learn sort of the mirror of that in the structure of reality lesson. It's going to be about tzimtzum and masach, that screen. Masach means a screen. That's really the translation of the word. So you're going to understand this from a more technical perspective, and the reading as preparation can be found by clicking on the lesson link in the schedule. So you can go to the schedule tab and click the lesson link, and you'll find material that you can read to prepare. And always, if you have questions, go ahead, take them to the forum. The Q&A forum could be great if you want to ask questions between the lessons. And if you have any technical issues still, really it's best to solve these things before the lessons. Just contact ec@kabbalah.info, and our volunteers will be happy to help you to make sure that that you get an answer. And that's basically it for today. I think we've covered quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It was great to see how everyone is in the lesson is kind of beginning to find what Kabbalah really talks about. This is really exciting. So we have a clip to conclude?
Yes, we do. Let's conclude with a clip. It's a clip about revealing the collective soul, which is what we want to do. So let's conclude, and we'll finish with that clip. So thank you all very much. It was great to be with you. We'll see you next week.
See you next week. Bye-bye.
This light that reforms is the general light that fulfills the soul. Its nature is the light of Ein Sof, infinity, meaning it comes from its presence in the connection between opposite parts. Therefore, if we take our opposite, contradicting parts, and we try to somewhat unite them, connect them, only by that we can match the light that reforms, and to that extent of our efforts, it acts on us. And then, according to the effort to correct the shattering, we draw closer to the implementation. That is, where we can really enter the true corrections, where the light, after we make sufficient reciprocal efforts with arvut, mutual guarantee, understanding that one cannot do it on his own, only if he receives the force from others. By all those efforts, when we try and the light influences us, then effort by effort, until the cup is filled, so to speak. And this is how we discover the Kli, where the corrections of Lishma begin. Bestowing in order to bestow and receiving in order to bestow. And all those corrections must happen within the Kli, the vessel that we correct, for the purpose, for the sake of revealing, bonding with, adhering to the Creator, called Boreh, come and see, that is revealed within the Kli. It is the quality that the Kli attains. This is why one should always build within him that image where the I, that point he identifies, sympathizes with, and the other points, we are building some collective desire that gradually takes on a collective force of bestowal. And although it is our strength of bestowing, within it, some new reality is revealed. Within that force of bestowal, within that desire that bestows, that quality that gradually starts bestowing, in that collective quality of bestowal, which is not just a collective quality, we already are bonded. So, in our connection, through 125 gradual steps, we begin to feel that common quality called Binah. And in that quality, we begin to feel the force called Chokhmah. That is the Creator, the light of Chokhmah, that is revealed within the light of Chasadim. Many people, thousands of people who are with us together right now all over the globe or watching us on TV, many people are listening to the same thing right now. What should we focus on? That's exactly what we're talking about. If we think the same, if we want the same, if we want this to happen, if those points, meaning each and everyone's aspirations and the extent to which we portray the connection between us correctly and understand that this is where we discover spirituality, the more we connect all those three things together, me with the collective Kli, the group, the light that reforms, and the Creator that is revealed within, all in order to resemble Him, if we put all that together into the image of Adam, man, which is the collection of all those desires that are interconnected in the right combination between them, this is called Adam, man. If we want to achieve that form, then we already draw the light that reforms, and we advance. For sure, we will feel the changes. And time again, the main thing is not to leave these thoughts and to constantly be engaged in them. In everything we do, in all our actions, in anything we can. So then, in a very short time, we can achieve great outcomes.